Hello and welcome back to Blow Up the Team. Jeremy here today with a very angry Matt.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you. I think these are the only words you've said to each other. Listen, man thinks that can't stand John Sterling. He's got a little bit of an eccentric style. The man is a Yankees broadcast legend. He has certified banger calls for every home run. The man is awesome, and I don't give a shit what you have to say.
All
And
right.
so, and you know
First of
what? Our
all,
our Twitter account says it too. John Sterling is an actual treasure, and Jeremy can literally go fuck himself. Thank you. I've even
considering
gone
you
and
run it, that's not surprising.
I've also gone and liked it by myself, and I'm going to my other account now to go ahead and like
All
it.
right, you've gone out of control. Anyways, this is not about the Yankees. This is about the one, the
Dub number
only.
one, dub number one. We're on pace for 60-0, baby.
Okay. And that's when the banhammer comes down on Matt. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Um. Are you excited? We're at the end. This is the last one. We've made it.
I mean, from like my 5 sentences over the course of this series, I worked really hard on it.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, it's also look. I'm considering this and the preseason grades kind of as one big series with two sides
they're
to
like
it.
they're like more personal projects for us. We were both looking for things to talk about to make sure this channel doesn't, I mean, let's not say our channel is exactly, you know, not dead, but not make sure it didn't die and just never come back. Give us something to do.
Yeah, it gave us something to do over quarantine, but it's
Listen, yeah,
it's.
it gave me something healthy to focus on. So
Hey, let's be honest. I'm gonna be honest here. I did not think that we were gonna hit every single upload without missing a day. I definitely thought there's gonna be a couple of days that we just didn't get around to it. I'm impressed. We didn't miss one.
I mean, listen, if it wasn't for you, 100% would not have. You know what I just found out?
Hmm?
I wasn't following our own page on Twitter.
Wow! You're gonna come at me, but you don't even follow our own accounts.
Neither do you actually.
Yeah, 'cause I don't have a Twitter.
Oh well, there you go. I follow us on Instagram. I know that.
I made the Instagram page, and so I know I follow it, but I don't use Twitter. That's the only reason I don't follow on Twitter. But anyways, we didn't miss an upload, and I'm proud of us.
No, yeah, no, I am proud as well. I mean, listen, if we kept going on that first original pace we had, 100% would have missed a lot.
Maybe so, but we made the call early. We didn't miss a single one. I respect us for that shit. It was a grind. There was one video we almost missed. There was one. We remember you recorded it at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it went up at 4. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
But anyways, to today's topic of the one, the only Philadelphia Eagles, city of brotherly love, baby. Despite the fact that a lot of teams can't stand our fans, but that's a different story for another day. Um, Today we're going to be talking about, in the last step in the series, the 2020 NFL Draft of the Philadelphia Eagles, and yeah, kind of going through that, and then at the end of the video, I guess we'll kind of do some general housekeeping things about going forward. But before we get into it, as usual, we do not own the highlights that I play throughout the video. So anything that's not coming directly from the ESPN draft page will be linked in the description down below. So be sure to check that out. But without further ado, that's enough stalling from me. Let's get into the video. Philadelphia Eagles in 2019 finished at 9-7, and it's such a hard season to look back on and try to make sense of. The team had, it had high potential going into the season, and then everybody was injured. Some inconsistent play, but mostly there was just injuries everywhere. But the team pulled it together. They managed to win the division somehow, some way. Thank you, Dallas, for choking that one. And you know what? We may have lost to Seattle, but the game was actually a good game until Carson Wentz got injured. I'm not gonna lie to you. Going into the game, I mean, Seattle looked really strong, and I really liked the way that their team was playing. So I kind of expected them to win that game, but obviously as a fan, you
Yeah,
still hold
going
out
into
hope.
that game was brutal for like a while. It was like close, and both teams were playing really well. And then yeah, Carson Wentz getting injured definitely kind of screwed you.
Yeah,
But
having him get injured and then us not having Big Dick Nick back there.
Big Dick Nick,
Yes, sir. But not having
man is literally
him,
getting.
was I think the downfall. We finally saw. I think everybody that was wondering why we kept spending the money that we were spending to bring Nick Foles back, even though it was not that we were spending a ton of money, but there were definitely a lot of times that I was seeing like, oh, like you don't need to have both of these guys in the locker room, whatever. It, People saw why having him was so powerful for us for so many for those few seasons. People knew it, I think, but it was reinforced this year because of the fact that just straight up once Carson Wentz went down, the quarterback play level just dropped significantly. And to no fault of the backups, it's just the level of play just wasn't there, and the style of offense had to change so drastically. Um, Offense was 14th in yards per game this season, 11th in passing yards, 11th in rushing yards, and 12th in points per game. So they were pretty solid all around. They weren't necessarily extremely lacking in any one area or extremely dominant in any other one. And I would definitely say that this was a case of the team kind of. It started out strong through the air, especially like Deshaun Jackson showed a lot of promise in that first week against Washington. Um, but it as the season kind of went on, and they started getting injury after injury, the offense, at least through the air especially, kind of stalled out for a few weeks, trying to figure out who their wide
Or
receiving
they would
options were
drop
going to be.
everything. Nelson Aguilar,
Yeah, holes in his hands, holes in his
greatest
hands.
interview of all time. Yo, I caught that baby. Unlike Nelson Aguilar with the football, like Jesus, Philly fans, you are obsessed.
Yeah, we're ruthless. Um, but everybody was injured, and Nelson Aguilar was kind of the last remaining pillar. Greg Ward became the leading wide receiver for a few weeks, and he was the quarterback like as recently as like the season before. So, um, it was definitely an interesting season, but I would say the team showed a lot of resiliency, especially at the end of the season. Um, the running game came together. Oh God, this is terrible. I had the name in my head and I forgot. Miles Sanders, excuse me. He came into his own at the end of the season, and he really showed a lot of promise coming down the stretch. So I would say the team played well, came together well, and it withstood injuries about as well as you could ask for. Um, Notable things that in the offseason they traded a 2020 sixth round pick for Marquise Goodwin and a later pick in that same sixth round. Um, so they brought in a solid wide receiver option. I would say, looking kind of at the depth chart, and we're going to get more into this as we go along. The position is looking to be deeper than it has in the past few years. Um, Last season, like I mentioned, once the top couple guys got injured, there was a huge drop off. Um, I would say that this season, I see kind of guys, further down the depth charts that have a lot of potential and have a lot of promise, which is something that couldn't really be said for a few years. It was definitely last season where you had so many question marks the further you went down, but um, I definitely think that they've added some depth this offseason. On the defensive side of the football, they were 10th in yards allowed, 19th in passing yards, 3rd in rushing yards, and 15th in points allowed. I don't think this is really any surprise to any Eagle fan out there. The secondary is something we've kind of been struggling with for years. Malcolm Jenkins was kind of the lone standing pillar back there that was trying to do it all. And unfortunately, we did lose him in the offseason this year. But the front seven for a bunch of years was one of the best in the league. And even though the linebacking core has kind of lost some talent just kind of over time, the front four are still one of the best in the league. And it showed last season. They were just stifling against the run. It's going to be interesting to see how the new pieces that they got. They added depth kind of all over the secondary, so I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to be able to mesh together into Jim Schwartz's system and kind of come together on that front. As I mentioned, we did lose Malcolm Jenkins, which was definitely a big hit, but we made so many moves everywhere else that I actually think that the defensive unit as a whole will probably be, especially against the pass, just overall improved this season. They signed Will Parks from the Broncos. I would say he could potentially start at free safety or be a number 3 safety with Jalen Mills moving to start at free safety position. So um, that'll be interesting to see how they do that. Jalen Mills was previously a corner, but there's been a lot of speculation that he will move to safety to start the season. The next up, they signed Jatavis Brown from the Chargers to start a middle linebacker, trying to build for that linebacking core. And they also signed Javon Hargrave from the Steelers to start a defensive tackle next to Fletcher Cox, which is going to help them kind of make a solid interior defensive line with Malik Jackson as well. And that's projected to be one of the best in the league again. Now, the big splash, the big notable splash in the secondary, which is why a big part of the reason why I think it will be an improved unit. They traded a third and a fifth round pick in 2020 for Darius Slay. He's considered to be by many a top 5 to 10 corner in the league, and he's going to be cornerback 1 for this team. He's going to be that guy that you can kind of put out on the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver. And he's going to do a solid job of sticking coverage. Obviously, you can't necessarily leave anybody on an island against the top wide receivers in this league, but he's definitely going to be a solid option and definitely a step up over the kind of corner crew that we had back there last season. Not that any of those guys were, you know, all of those guys have a place in a system somewhere, but we didn't really have that kind of top corner, that kind of guy that you knew day in and day out was going to give you that solid production. That is, I believe, however, enough talking about the 2019 season and their off season. So let's now get into the 10 selections that the Eagles made in this year's draft. First up, they went with Jalen Reagor, wide receiver out of TCU. He is a little bit of a smaller receiver with short arms, but he's got good top end speed. He's quick and can make defenders miss, as well as having the balance to break tackles after the catch. He's too small to regularly win 50-50 balls downfield, but the speed is there for him to still stretch the defense. I can see him being a solid slot option this year, if nothing else. He is currently projected to be listed as wide receiver 3, but with Alshon Jeffrey likely to start the season on the physically unable to perform list after that surgery that he had on his foot, I would say this would likely make him wide receiver 2 behind Deshaun Jackson. I'm going to be interested to see what the chemistry him and Carson Wentz are able to build. I think that, as I mentioned, I think the wide receiver core is looking a lot deeper than it has in past years, and he's definitely a big part of that. There was some speculation on if they made the right selection at wide receiver. There was quite a few that were still left in the draft at that time. I'm going to check so I don't make a complete mockery of myself, but I believe notably was a player who was drafted right after him, and Justin Jefferson out of LSU. There was a lot of speculation as to why the Eagles looked his way as opposed to looked Jalen Reagor's way as opposed to Justin Jefferson. But I do think that both guys have solid upside. I do personally think that kind of somebody that I was surprised to see fall to the second round was T. Higgins. I really liked his game in college, and I also tend to be kind of more of a fan of those bigger body wide receivers that are going to be able to go up and make a play in 50-50 balls. But that's also all about what you think will fit best into the system, and they felt that Jalen Reagor was the best fit, and I definitely think that he has solid upside there. Next up, we've got Jaylen Hertz, quarterback out of Oklahoma. I know a lot of Eagles fans, including myself, were surprised to see them look quarterback so early in the draft with some of the other team needs and having Carson Wentz be so young. But Jaylen Hertz has got good arm strength, great top end speed, physically and mentally tough, and protects the football well. He does hold on to the ball too long, and his ball placement is inconsistent, especially outside and downfield. But he does have the ability to extend plays, and he's also a threat to get outside the pocket and run. His pocket presence is not always there, but these are some of the things that, like getting the ball out of his hands quicker, and developing a stronger pocket presence are things that they're going to look to develop on him and to create him. Wow, English is bad today. To give him an opportunity to become a solid NFL quarterback.
I think the biggest concern here is because multiple times now Carson Wentz has gotten injured, and that's totally tanked your season. And or what has tanked your Super Bowl season had you not had Big Dick Nick? But he's it tanked your chances at winning last year. And I'm sorry, hasn't Carson Wentz also been injured for a long, like in another season? Wasn't he injured for a long period of time? Or am I wrong about that?
I think most of his so he had the one injury, the ACL, the Super Bowl season, and then last 2 years ago, um, at the end of the season, he also got hurt, and Nick Foles had to step in the playoffs. And then last season he got hurt again in the playoffs. So he doesn't necessarily miss a ton of time. I think he missed maybe the first few weeks 2 years ago. Um,
Mm.
so he hasn't necessarily missed a ton of time during the season, but he's had a lot of big injuries at the end of the season.
Yeah, so I guess they're looking. Yeah, I think that would be their logic there. Is like, but though I don't think Carson Wentz is, I think obviously though it's been mostly focused on the end of the season, him getting injured. But at the end of the day, getting injured like that, and needing your star quarterback not there, I think gives them enough purchase to get to go out there and search for a quarterback. I don't think it's necessarily the best pick for them, but I can kind of see the logic that they're using when they pick Jalen. And at the end of the day, I think Jalen Hurts has a lot of really good qualities in a quarterback that you're going to want at the NFL level. And so Jalen Hurts, I don't think is, uh, I think he's definitely a solid pick in the second round. I wouldn't say it's my favorite pick for them, but I think it's overall not a bad pick, depending on what you're looking at.
And that's what I was looking at as well. He's projected to be quarterback 3 this season behind Nate
Oh, my poor
Sudfeld as
dog.
oh,
I'm
the
sorry.
thunderstorm.
Yes, the thunderstorm. She's absolutely freaking out. I keep opening the door to let her out because like she likes to run into the bathroom and sit in there, but she's like frozen in fear. Okay,
Sorry to
sorry.
hear it.
Continue.
No, it's all good. Um, he is listed at quarterback 3 this season behind Nate Sudfeld as well as Carson Wentz. But I would say he should be a solid backup option very soon. I would say as early as even later this season if he shows some serious improvement. Listen, anybody who's followed Jalen Hurts has seen the potential that he's shown in college, both at Alabama and then when he moved over to Oklahoma. I think that he showed solid potential for sure. He's shown the ability to produce. You can you can break down his game however you want. At the end of the day, he's got a winning tradition. Both of the teams that he played for were very, very solid college football teams, and he was a big part of those teams. So um, sometimes you've just got to pick. If sometimes you look at a guy and you say, you know what, he's too talented for me to let him slip. And I kind of feel like that was the area that they were in here. And as Matt brought up, Carson Wentz, he's got a very unfortunate injury history. So having that solid backup that you can put in there and you're not going to see a huge drop off in production. Somebody that you can put in that will be able to protect the football, but still be a threat. And I think that Jalen Hurts has the potential to fit that bill. Maybe he's not ready to be that necessarily this season, but you know, towards the end of this season and especially next season, I would expect for him to be kind of a very solid backup option for this team. And if nothing else, if he shows that kind of promise, if nothing else, he'll definitely be a good trade piece to have as well. Um, Moving on to the next pick, they went with Davion Taylor, outside linebacker out of Colorado. He's a hybrid linebacker safety. He does lack the ideal size to play linebacker, but he's got good top end speed, a little bit below average length, but he's got the burst and athletic
Oh my
ability.
God, are you hearing this over by you?
No.
Okay. No, it's just straight up, just some of the one of the worst thunderstorms in quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, I heard it earlier, so it's probably just moving towards you. Anyways,
Anyway, sorry for
Davion
interrupting
Taylor.
again.
No, it's all good. Um, he's got the burst and athletic ability to compete in man coverage. He's also a solid tackler, and he's showed flashes of good stopping power. His range is not as high as would be expected based on his time speed, but I would say he has the skill set to develop into a sideline to sideline player. He's listed as a backup linebacker for now, but I can definitely see them experimenting with him at different places in the formation, see where he's best suited. Whether that is giving him a few snaps at safety, whether it's in practice or even a couple in the games, just to see what kind of look he gives them. I could see them doing that. The Eagles' defense is kind of known for being creative in terms of where they line up their players. Malcolm Jenkins was especially notable for this, how he moved all over the formation. So um, I think that somebody like this that is kind of a hybrid like Taylor was noted to be, I wouldn't be surprised to see him move all over the formation, and kind of see what he can give you at different places. And I think that kind of going forward for this team, they're kind of gonna have to be creative. Um, the core of this team that won that Super Bowl is either not here anymore, and the ones that are still here are kind of getting older, and then Carson Wentz's contract is kicked in, or is going to kick in very shortly if it has not already. That's going to constrict your cap space significantly. So you're going to have to get creative with how you utilize guys to get the most out of them. So definitely something to keep in mind going forward. But anyways, on to the next pick. They went with Kayvon Wallace, safety out of Clemson. Um, He is a safety / nickel corner, so again, looking for those guys that are going to be flexible to be able to move all around the formation. He also is not necessarily. He doesn't necessarily have the size to regularly match up with tight ends, and he doesn't really have center field range, but he does compete well when lining up over the slot, especially because his instincts and athletic ability tend to be a good match for that spot. He tackles fairly well, and he's expected to back up Rodney McLeod at the strong safety position. Again, they're kind of looking for guys that they can move around the formation that will give them an ability to have different looks as they try to figure out what their defensive identity is going to be this season. Obviously, the front four is still going to be the front four. You still got Fletcher Cox. You still got Brandon Graham. What's that young kid's name? I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. Derek Barnett. You still got a solid kind of core for your front four, but the secondary is kind of up in the air, and it has been now for a few seasons. So I'm interested to see what they're able to do with these pieces that they're picking up that they can kind of flex around the formation. Next up, we got Jack Driscoll, offensive guard out of Auburn. He was a right tackle in college, but he projects better as a guard. He's got decent size, but below average length, but he also has great quickness. He's got good hand placement and pass protection. He's not necessarily overpowering as a run blocker, but he walls off well. He was looking to start at right guard this season until the re-signing of Jason Peters, who is expected to move to right guard. I would say this is still a solid backup option to have, especially behind an unfortunately more injury-prone veteran. And I would say that, going forward, it's Jason Peters is kind of nearing the end of his tenure as an Eagle, and I would say kind of as a tenure in the league as a whole, as he's starting to get up in age. And this is a solid guy to be able to step in and kind of take a season to learn from one of the greats, even if he is at an off position this year, and kind of go from there. He's also listed as a third-string right tackle, although I do expect him to stay more at the right guard position, barring a substantial amount of injuries. Next up, they went with John Hightower, another wide receiver, this time out of Boise State. He's got a above-average route running, great speed, and he can kind of take the top off the defense. He has big play potential, kind of as soon as he gets his hands on the ball. He can be impactful on the return game, jet sweeps, kind of anything like that. His ball skills, unfortunately, do look like he can be shaky. I think, like most Eagles fans, bad flashbacks to a certain Eagles player named Nelson Aguilar who looked like he had holes in his hands. So we're hoping that it's not necessarily a repeat of that. So anytime that I see inconsistent hands, that concerns me a little bit. But hopefully he's able to shore that up. He does need to add some strength and learn to clear press coverage / play through contract better, just in general. I would say that kind of that will also just kind of come with time and maturity as well. Get some time in the weight room, get some time working with these guys, and that will show up kind of naturally over time. Now, this is kind of a weird one for me in terms of trying to grade, which is ultimately what we're going to be looking at later on when we get to the end. He is listed as a wide receiver 7, which normally, in 99.99% of situations, I look at that and I say he's so late in the depth charts, he's unlikely to have an impact this season. However, given the vast injury problems that the Eagles had last season at the wide receiver position, I'm hesitant to say that he won't make an impact this season because we saw last season how quickly we got near the bottom of our starting season roster at the wide receiver position. So I would say, given that injury history, I'm not necessarily mad at it, even if he is not expected to be kind of one of the top guys this season. I believe he was a fifth round pick as well. Yeah, a late fifth round pick. So, kind of getting a guy that has solid potential and can step in and still kind of give you some spark in your offense, even if you've had a few injuries, is definitely a good option to have. Um, and again, I think that it's unfortunate. Well, it's unfortunate that he's wide receiver 7 before factoring in Alshon Jeffrey starting out on the physically unable to perform list. So then that already makes him wide receiver 6. So you're really only talking about one or two guys get injured. Suddenly he's starting to get looks in the offense. So I'm not necessarily too mad about it, specifically given the Eagles' history of injuries at the position. Next up, we've got Sean Bradley, inside linebacker out of Temple. He's very fast for a linebacker, and he can get into the backfield and make a play. He has good range, but doesn't necessarily close as fast as his speed would suggest. He's an inconsistent tackler, but he runs with backs and tight ends in coverage. And he's listed as a third-string linebacker. As we kind of get into the late fifth, sixth, and seventh rounds, kind of getting guys that are kind of like him, where he's gonna be a little bit more of a kind of just a depth filler at the position. It's not necessarily a bad option. It kind of gives them a chance to develop and see what they can do kind of longer term without necessarily having to put them on the field this season. And I think that's definitely what we're going to see here with Sean Bradley. Next up, they went with their third wide receiver of the draft, Kez Wilkins, out of Southern Mississippi. He had the third fastest 40 at the combine. So obviously he has that second gear to take the top off the coverage. He has the potential to find the end zone anytime he can find a seam, whether that's after the catch or in the return game. He just, again, unfortunately shows inconsistent hands, and so he's going to need to improve that, as well as his ability to win 50-50 balls. He's listed right behind, or he's expected to be listed right behind earlier pick John Hightower in the depth chart. So he's kind of in the same boat where he's not necessarily likely to have an impact this season, but given what we saw last season, who knows? And their final pick in the draft, they're only. Oh no, I'm sorry. There's two more picks in the draft. This one is Prince Tega Winogo. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Offensive tackle out of Auburn. He has good size and initial quickness, but he can fall off blocks, and he does not necessarily get to the second level great in the run game. He's got solid strength, but his hand placement is a bit inconsistent, and he does get caught lunging at times. He has below average kind of just overall athletic ability and length to play the tackle position, which means that he could wind up being suited better at guard. I would expect for them to kind of experiment with that over his first season or so, especially considering the fact that he's not necessarily extremely likely to, barring injury, see the field this season. So we'll be able to see kind of what he's got as the season goes on in practice. He is currently listed or expected to be listed as a backup left tackle. So kind of just overall depth along the offensive line as well. Now their final pick in the draft, Casey Tuho, a defensive end out of Stanford. He had a good combine and a breakout season last year. He showed a lot of flexibility at Stanford. It was mentioned that he lined up a defensive end, linebacker. He was a coverage linebacker as well. So he's kind of got that flexibility to move all over the defense. He has the burst and closing speed to develop into a solid edge rusher, but he just needs to work a little bit on developing his hand fighting abilities. He is listed as a fourth string defensive end, but as a seventh round pick, for him to have the kind of potential that it looks like he could have, um, that's big for somebody that drafted so late in the draft. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops. I believe he's already 23 or 24. So he's a little bit on the older side, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how he develops as time goes on. That is, however, all 10 picks that the Eagles made this season. So I think it's now time for us to get into draft grades. Matt, are you here?
I am here.
I
Though
am,
the
in this case, the
Thunder
very
doesn't
biased
want me to be.
person. So I'm going to allow you to take the lead initially on
Oh God.
where do you think this team should be? Because I need someone to check
Listen,
my bias
I'm of
here.
two schools of thought here, because I understand going wide receiver in the first round. I also can understand some of the logic behind going quarterback. However, I really don't like the fact that their biggest problem on this team is their passing defense, and they continue to put off picking safeties and stuff until the third and fourth round. But at the same time, for the other stuff they've had, yeah, we're not. This is an MLB video.
Yeah, I clicked the wrong one. Continue.
So I think it's definitely in the B range. I'm just questioning: how much do I value that secondary? How many holes do I really think they filled? And I'm not sure that filling that second quarterback, the backup quarterback, is as big as filling in that pretty awful secondary. Or not awful, not great secondary.
No, you could say awful. They looked
Okay,
abysmal.
awful
There was
secondary.
definitely some points last season where they looked just straight up abysmal. I'm not gonna lie to you.
And so I'm leaning towards the B minus for that reason. I just think they needed to go higher for their safeties and because they were better safeties. They're better, and then one of their safeties they drafted is primarily an offensive or linebacker. Who just happens to also dabble in safety. Like I get that people can play multiple positions, but in fact, at the end of the day, is you're drafting him. Jesus Christ,
What?
this Thunder is actually kind of terrifying.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Uh,
yeah. So I'm leaning towards the B minus personally.
So, I think that's fair. I think that I would have also liked to have seen them kind of pick up a corner. The only reason I'm going to slightly disagree with you, is they did make big trades to bring in a big name corner, and they also made a notable signing of another safety. So they did attack those in the off season. So waiting until later into the draft um, is not necessarily the end of the world for me. But I do agree that they definitely could have looked that way a slightly earlier. Um, I don't know. I definitely have strong bias here. I'm going to try to be as objective as I can. I was thinking more in the B range. So do you think that you could agree on a B?
I could agree with B.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, so
Yeah. Plus, you're allowed to be biased. It's your video,
yeah, that's fair.
and you're not being like super crazy biased. You respect their decision a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fair. I also think that, and by the way, this is Thumbnail Gun, so welcome Thumbnail Gun to the man behind all of the thumbnails for all of our videos. He's
Hello.
covered for Matt for a second. I think I am going to start the minute at B, also because I do know a little bit more about what this team did in the offseason. Obviously, I try to stick to the notables, but there was a lot of kind of depth chart filling pieces, and they focused not mainly, but they focused a large part of those depth chart fillers in the secondary as well, which Matt had no way of knowing, not having kind of done that research. So I think that while they still absolutely needed to fill those holes, and I would have liked to have seen them kind of find that guy in the draft that I think is going to, he's going to do it this season. He's going to help turn this secondary around. But I do think that they addressed it in other ways. So I think that while I still would have liked to have seen them look that way, it's maybe not the end of the world. So I think that I'm going to place them in at a B. I think that you could easily argue up or down from this point. To be honest, it's kind of all just kind
It
of
depends on what you're
conjecture.
looking for in a team.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about kind of where you feel the team needed to address more pressingly. I think. I could easily see arguments for what Matt was saying, kind of down B minus. I could even see maybe someone arguing for a C plus, maybe. But I could also easily see someone arguing for like an A minus. I think that it's all a matter of, especially when you start looking at the big wild cards for me, and I mentioned it as we were going through, were those kind of two wide receivers that they selected, kind of later in the draft, John Hightower and Kez Watkins. That's kind of what do you make of their overall talent? Do you think they have a potential to if their name is called, kind of step in and make that impact? And given the Eagles' struggles, I keep mentioning it, but given their struggles to stay healthy at that position last year, it's something that you've got to look at. So I think I'm going to slot them in at a B for the draft, but I could easily see you arguing up or down from this point. That being said, I do believe we have reached the end of the video, which means we've also reached the end of the series. It does not look like Matt is back, so I'm going to stall for a few seconds. As usual, we do not own the clips for or the highlight video that I was showing throughout the video, so be sure to check that out. That will be linked in the description down below. Also in the description down below is our Twitter and our Instagram page. I don't spend a whole lot of time on our Instagram page, but as you heard in the beginning of the video, Matt does occasionally go on and make a post on our Twitter, so be sure to check that out. Also linked in the description is our Discord page, so be sure to come on over and say what's up. In terms of
remember,
go ahead, thumbnail.
we'll pay attention to you if you actually come and talk to us.
Yes, there's that. Also, please, I'm gonna go back to it. Commenting on my videos, you stupid, you don't know football. I can't respond to that. If you have like a hey, I think this, I will gladly have that conversation with you. But just saying you stupid, you don't know football, there's no response to that. There's nothing that you can really do to that. So,
Go make your own response video, then we'll talk.
or comment, like a productive comment would also be sufficient. It doesn't look like Matt is back. Is that correct?
I was gonna try and like slip in here and see what was being said.
Yeah, I said I was gonna give them a B, mostly because I know a little bit more about what they did in the offseason, and they attacked the depth pretty heavily, which you had no way of knowing without having done the research. So they attacked their secondary depth pretty heavily. That was the kind of wrap up there. And then I was just kind of doing some general housekeeping things about our Twitter, Instagram, Discord, all of that. And now that you're back, it's a good time to note that, again, this is the end of both of our two series. This is the kind of the last video in the long stream that we did, where we went through all NFL and MLB teams. It was an adventure, I would say. I definitely think that we got better as time went on, for sure, or at least more efficient, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So we had talked about doing some NBA videos next week, maybe one or two, just to talk about kind of the bubble opening up, or not opening up, but starting up the season again in Orlando, as well as maybe talking about some of our picks for the end of season awards, since we were told that Orlando will not be taken into account for that voting process. So we have that coming next week, but other than that, we don't necessarily know kind of what's next. So if there's anything that you guys would like to see, leave that in the comment section, or come on over to our Discord and drop some ideas. Matt, other than those two videos, is there anything that you were kind of looking at doing?
I want to do something about like maybe it's like a general like playoff prediction, like a very short video, just talking about who I think is, because the MLB did announce today the playoffs this year are going to be expanding to 16 teams just for this year. So, maybe talk about which teams I think are going to make the postseason now, because I talked about a few teams who I thought were borderline there, but probably aren't making it. So, I want to talk about that a little bit, but yeah, it's really the only plan now. I imagine we'll also start to do more podcast style episodes now that we're getting into actual baseball and basketball.
Yeah, as the season starts to open back up, definitely look for us to start like going back to the original kind of podcast format. Maybe not hour long, but kind of get back to more just not targeted necessarily at one team, just kind of just talking about what's going on. But I think that we have kind of covered all our bases here. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
So with all this being said, if you'd like the video, hit that like button, comment and subscribe. We will be back next week with probably some of those NBA videos, although we do not necessarily have a schedule for those, so keep an eye out for those. And like I said, come over to our Discord and say what's up, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Thanks for watching.